Welcome to Tech Talks. Our security edition today is focused on a new use case for Splunk Phantom, tackling AWS security automation. Tech Talks is a series of short webinars focused on features and best practices within use cases. We value you, our customer, and want you to continue in your Splunk journey. Our experts help create these tips and tricks, and we want you to leverage them in your daily role. I'm Olivia Courtney, a Security Product Marketing Specialist, and I'm excited to share this information with you. First, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Matt Tishner.
Hi, everybody. I'm Matt Tishner. I'm a product manager here at Splunk. I'm responsible for the apps and integrations on our Phantom SOAR product.
Thanks, Matt. Today, we're going to talk about a new use case on how to use Splunk Phantom in your cloud environment. We'll show you how you can better monitor your AWS environment with automation. We'll demo Splunk Phantom's ability to turn AWS findings into action. And then we will cover additional resources available to help you take advantage of Phantom capabilities. Our team will be available for Q&A over the Q&A feature. And if you watch a recorded version of this webinar, please continue the conversation through the Splunk community website for any follow-up questions.
Start this discussion by talking about all the different sources of information we have at our fingertips about what's going on in our AWS environment from a security context. If we want to set up automation around AWS, we really want to start by understanding the tools we have available to help us monitor what's going on in our AWS environment. So there are a variety of tools you can use for this task. Several are offered natively by AWS itself. And you can also use Splunk as a generic and flexible tool to assemble whatever is relevant to your team or organization. There are several vendors that offer dedicated AWS monitoring tools, which typically monitor your cloud or your AWS and potentially other cloud environments simultaneously. So lots of tools are in tool chest, but let's just kind of deep dive and kind of talk about a couple of them and what they can do. So for starters, Splunk. Why use Splunk with AWS? Splunk's super flexible, and you can search over whatever you want. So you can pretty much, every organization has their own things they care about, their own unique security concerns. And with the power of Splunk's flexible search engine, you can suck all your data into AWS and construct whatever searches are relevant to your team. Additionally, you can use the power of Splunk Search to pull in context from other tools, data sources and services that might not be available just with the AWS data alone. For example, maybe you want to correlate a user, some EC2 instance with like, I don't know, an Active Directory record on your back end. All capabilities that come with the flexibility of Splunk Search. Splunk Enterprise Security is another tool that's available on top of Splunk as a SIEM. If you guys are not ES users, I really encourage you to check out on Splunk base the ESCU app. It's a great little tool with a bunch of pre-built searches all on servicing really interesting AWS security related alerts. So there are a lot of pre-canned searches that you can use over your AWS data to generate interesting security findings. Pivoting down this slide into the offerings from AWS itself. So AWS does a really cool job of monitoring your environment for you and surfacing findings. We'll talk about what you can actually do with those later and how you can automate a solution to actually take those findings and do something with Splunk Phantom. But for now, just like a really brief overview of what the different tools available within AWS are. One is AWS GuardDuty. I think this one's particularly interesting. GuardDuty will monitor your servers, your logs, etc., and generate findings such as, for example, detecting Bitcoin mining on a EC2 instance and detecting potential IAM or your AWS user account compromise. A couple other interesting security monitoring tools provided by AWS natively are AWS Macie, which has a kind of a machine learning driven approach for monitoring for different types of PII. So think about the classic security in the cloud use case of someone uploading sensitive data to a public S3 bucket. Macy's really designed around detecting that kind of scenario. Another tool is Inspector. Inspector is an automated security assessment tool. It's very much focused on vulnerabilities and compliance. So that's kind of your primary wheelhouse. That's a good tool to take a look at. And finally, Security Hub. So Security Hub, from my perspective, was built to help kind of consolidate and aggregate all the different tools within your AWS ecosystem for security and select them all into one dashboard. What comes out of Security Hub at the end of the day is a bunch of findings or alerts, and that's what we're going to focus on for today's technical demonstration, how to take these AWS Security Hub findings that got aggregated from all these different AWS security tools, get them into your Splunk Phantom, and automate an actual response to these alerts. So instead of just spewing a bunch of alerts, now we're actually doing something about them. Okay, great. So we talked about different sources of security alerts coming out of AWS, put a little focus on Security Hub. Now that we assume we have these tools generating all these alerts, what can we actually go and do about them? So I'd like to talk a little bit about the different mechanisms you're going to have available in kind of your tool belt if you dump these alerts into Phantom and use Phantom to build out a automated response framework for processing and responding to these alerts. So the Phantom tool is extremely flexible for handling the actual response to these security alerts. There are currently over 320 different app integrations available on the platform. So really the sky is the limit with how you want to build your response to these security workflows. There are over 12 different integrations with native AWS services available for you to be able to help enrich and respond to any alert coming out of AWS. So think about things like, for example, the Phantom integration with AWS EC2. So if you get that alert about a compromised EC2 instance, you can use that integration to do things like immediately and automatically quarantine the compromised device by assigning a quarantine security group. If you get an alert around a compromised user, you can use the AWS IAM integration to go reset that user's password automatically and programmatically through the Phantom workflows. One of I think the most compelling values of using Phantom to respond to these AWS security alerts is that there are integrations with hundreds of other tools outside the context of AWS. For example, obviously, Phantom's connected to Splunk, so maybe you want to go run some Splunk queries to gather additional data about that alert that's surfaced and enrich the alert so an analyst has much more context as to the relative significance of that alert. Perhaps you want to incorporate other tools in your SOX tool chain to respond to those alerts. For example, perhaps in response to that alert, you just want to do something as simple as creating a Jira or ServiceNow ticket. Perhaps you want to send a Slack message to the owner of that EC2 instance that was compromised to pull them into the security team's response to that incident. All these things are well within the wheelhouse of responding to alerts on Splunk Phantom. In addition to Splunk Phantom, some other options if you're looking around security automation, and a lot of the language you'll find on AWS's documentation is around building Lambda functions. So AWS Lambda functions can be tied to these Security Hub alerts and used to help respond to these incidents. Obviously, if you're working with a Lambda, it requires a pretty high degree of software development knowledge. So for those that are really hands-on, definitely take a look at that. But if you want kind of some more pre-built options, I think Phantom has a lot of powerful tools that are going to make your life a lot easier. Okay, so we want to get to a point on this call where we can show you how to walk through and fully automate a response to an AWS security event. But before we do that, we need to get those AWS security events into our Phantom instance. So we're going to work with Security Hub to do that. And what I'd like to do now is to demonstrate to you how to actually get Security Hub events into your Phantom. So normally with Phantom, pulling data in is as simple as plugging in an API key for whatever tool you want to plug those alerts into. and then boom, you're off to the races. Security Hub, unfortunately, makes life a little bit more complicated, so this demo is going to be a little more involved than normal, but I'll walk you through everything. Essentially, what's going on behind the scenes is that with Security Hub, you can't directly pull alerts out of their API. Instead, you have to take advantage of a AWS tool called CloudWatch Events. So we are going to need to set up a CloudWatch event that will forward every alert out of Security Hub into a SQS queue. So it's a queuing tool provided by AWS. And then we're going to point our Phantom at that queuing tool. So we've made it as simple as possible through a CloudFormation template. So we have a more or less a kind of a script for AWS that will help deploy a lot of this infrastructure for you. But enough of me talking. Let's kick over to the AWS console and show you how to do this hands-on.
Okay, so now I'm going to walk you guys through the process of setting up the AWS Security Hub app in Phantom. To do this, it's a little bit more complex than a typical app setup, so I'll just show you exactly how it's done. But in short, what we're going to need to do is to pivot over to AWS, run a CloudFormation template, which the app provides through its documentation, and that will set up a event forwarding out of Security Hub into a SQS queue, and then we'll go back into Phantom and set up Phantom to point at that SQS queue and ingest all the AWS Security Hub alerts from there. So let's start by navigating to our Phantom. Here I'm in my Phantom. I'm going to click on the AWS Security Hub app here. You can see I've navigated to the app screen. Go ahead and search for security, pull up Security Hub. Let's take a look at the app documentation. And you can read through this here in more detail later, but the key piece I want to look at is to pull this CloudFormation template URL here. So this is the CloudFormation template that's going to drive everything we need to configure this app. So let me just go back over to my AWS console. Load up CloudFormation, and then I'll select Create Stack with new resources. So in case you're not familiar, CloudFormation is basically kind of like a way to run a script to provision and configure different AWS resources. So it's kind of like running a shell script that will boot up some servers for us. So I'll just paste that URL I got out of my Security Hub documentation for the Phantom app. This is the CloudFormation template we would like to run. And I'll click Next. I'll give it a stack name. Just use my actions. This custom ARN parameter, we'll ignore that for now, but if you only wanted to send particular alerts to Phantom, you would take advantage of that. There's more in the documentation there. And I don't think there's anything in particular we need here, so we'll just skip through. Nothing there. Let's go ahead and create the stack. So I'll just wait. This typically takes a couple of minutes, so we'll just wait through this and see what happens here. In the meantime, I'll go back to my Security Hub. I'm going to begin the asset setup process here. Okay, asset settings, paste in my AWS access key and secret key. So you'll need to provision a AWS IAM account that has sufficient permissions to interface with all the relevant APIs. So for this particular app, it's going to obviously involve interaction with AWS Security Hub. So you'll need to make sure you're permissioned for that, as well as interaction with the SQS APIs. So SQS is how we're actually going to achieve the ingestion here. So I'll just put in my access key and secret key there. Select my region. This is a region-specific product. We happen to be working with North California region. And then SQS URL. This is the URL that is going to be generated through our CloudFormation script, assuming everything goes well. So it looks like some things are still in progress. So we'll just give this a few more seconds. Oh, actually, it looks like it's done. So what we're trying to get out of this CloudFormation template is a SQS URL that will be used for ingestion. So we can find that in the outputs column of the CloudFormation template. So all I need to do is take that value, go ahead and paste it over here. It looks like there's some leading white space, so let's clear that out. Down here, I can set up the polling interval if I like, so how often we're going to query. Actually, this is these two fields aren't relevant for this particular configuration, so let's just ignore that for now. Let's apply unique label, Security Hub, set up interval polling, and let's say I want to poll every 2 minutes. Now let's click Save. Okay, great. So in theory, everything is now set up. We've put in our SQS URL. We've set up a ingestion interval. It all looks rosy from this end. Now, just a couple helpful debugging tips. Now that I have this set up, I would expect us to start after a couple minutes. Keep in mind there's a couple minute polling interval. Some AWS Security Hub alerts to start flowing through. But if we want to prime the pump, perhaps this is your development environment, you just want to make sure everything's working. We can go over, and what I recommend to do is to actually pivot over to guard duty. Guard duty is one of the many AWS security services that can flow data into AWS Security Hub. But one of the nice things about guard duty is somewhere in here, they have a, well, it looks like they've rearranged their UI. But there's, oh boy, where'd it go? Well, they used to have a means of generating some dummy account data here. These are all, well, it looks like they took that away, so we'll have to proceed on without that. But I'll just show you one other debugging trick. Sorry for the demoware headaches. So this is my SQS stack that I just created. So if I go browse around here, I can actually see the $466 messages available. So it looks like we already have some messages sitting in this account. So that's what Phantom's going to be pulling from. So if I look into here, I can actually see the contents of this message, make sure my Security Hub alerts are coming across cleanly. And so long as Phantom is actually working correctly, we should see this number go down to 0. So if we see an empty queue, that's actually a reflection that things are working correctly, because as Phantom consumes from Security Hub, it's going to be basically pulling off a stack, so to speak. So eliminating entries from this queue. Okay, well, sorry about the little hiccup with guard duty, but that's how we set up Security Hub with Phantom.
Okay, so now I'm going to jump into another technical hands-on walkthrough. The foundation for this walkthrough is going to be around basically us getting an alert from AWS Security Hub around a potentially compromised EC2 instance. And I'm going to show you hands-on how you can build what we call playbook. So a playbook is a automated, or the the means by which you automate the response to a particular alert with Phantom, and all the ins and outs of how we're actually going to respond to that alert by doing things like quarantining the security group, sending out some notifications through Slack, email, etc. So with that said, let's jump over to the Phantom screen and show you how we can work and actually take action on all these alerts flowing out of our AWS environment. Okay, great. So we've got AWS Security Hub set up. We've got events flowing into Phantom. All right, that's good. So let's look at this screen. What we have is a screenshot from my Security Hub showing several of the alerts kind of currently in my system. So let's kind of paint a little bit of a picture. Let's tell a story here. So pretend, if you will, that you're a Tier 2 analyst in charge of monitoring your organization's AWS environment. You see this alert come across from Security Hub via guard duty. The alert says something about somebody's trying to do a brute force SSH attack on your AWS instance. Okay, great. They identified this, they give us alert. But now what do we want to do? Like, okay, well, what do we actually do with this alert? How do we respond to this? Perhaps you want to identify what's going on, what's happening with this alert. Is this really a thing? If so, how do we, what do we want to do about it? How do we want to go remediate that alert? And now let's just kind of zoom back a little. Let's say you're getting tens, maybe hundreds of these similar alerts a day. Like, what do you do with all this? So let's again talk about how we can use Phantom and automation to help solve that problem.
Okay, so the first thing I want to do is just show SSHing into an instance here. So I'm going to run a little script that does that and just does it verbosely, so it shows the connection string. So that's actually SSHing into a web host in my infrastructure. And I'm going to go to Security Hub where I just ingested an alert saying that instance was not compliant with a rule. Actually, there should be a newer one. Here it is. Yeah, unprotected port. So that's just showing that HTTPS is open to the world. So pretty common finding you might get in Security Hub. This one I believe came from Inspector, but it shows as personal because I'm just replaying it here. So I'm actually going to go into Phantom and take a look at it. Over here on the analyst queue, clicking on an individual event, you get into mission control, and you can see a whole playbook has run on that. First thing it does is it describes the instance, so it pulls down a lot of that useful information. The AMI it was built off of, the VPC, if there's an IAM role on it, all the keys on it. You can see some of these are specific to our company. I want to call out instance owner email is a key that we're using here to just show who controls that instance. And then you can see the security group is called Eknalart Web, so just important to keep those in mind. So this playbook, you can see we ran about 10 actions here. I'm going to actually show the playbook. It's called EC2 Instance Investigate and Notify. It's not really particular to this type of alert. All it really does is gather a bunch of information about what's running on the instance. So you can see we described it. We formatted an email, so this is just alerting an analyst of what's happening. So this is pretty common in Phantom where you build a format string for an analyst. And I can actually open up Firefox and just show that email. So here you can see it received a Security Hub finding. It has some key indicators, and then most importantly, it links to Security Hub and the specific finding, and then it links to mission control and Phantom. Some other things we did were we listed out the security groups that instance was a part of, and all the security groups, so we know kind of what's normal for that account. We SSH into the instance and list the IP tables rules. We SSH in and list all the running processes. SSH in lists the connections. So that's an interesting one because in the beginning I showed SSHing to that. So from my MacBook here, and you can actually see that running. That's actually my IP that I'm at now, 73.69.57. We then once we got those connections, we went a step further with those. We actually filtered them down to not to external IP addresses, so not the AWS internal ones. And then we went out and geolocated and did IP reputation on them. So you can see on here, with the IP that I was coming from, it's probably this one here. You can see where on a map that would be coming from. And then we did reputation using passive total. So just an engine that kind of stores DNS queries over time using those that resolve to those IP addresses. So that can be useful if it's actually changing quickly or seems suspicious because it's coming from attacker infrastructure. So finally, we've gathered all this information. We're going to show a prompt to the analyst, say, okay, so once you've seen all this, do you want to quarantine that instance? I'm going to say yes. Kicking off a second playbook called isolate EC2 instances. And what that did is it described the instance before doing anything. It added the security group that isolates. It removed any existing security groups that were already there. And then it described the instance again and built out a message showing what happened. So fairly simple, but it basically said before I ran this, this instance had the security group ecnalart web. Now afterwards, it has the security group ecnalart isolation. Finally, it added a note back to Security Hub. So once I go back there and refresh, that same finding there has this note from Phantom explaining what it did, and then also linking into Phantom if you wanted to take further action. And just to show, I'm going to go back. I'm actually typing on the keyboard here and not getting anything, meaning my SSH session is dead. And if I run that again, it's going to show that it just hangs here. So the isolate group did take effect. It actually happened pretty much immediately. So that's just showing that the instance is in fact isolated. But we left it open so that Phantom can still take remediation actions against it and investigation actions. So you'll see in this, after I made that security group change, I can still SSH in from Phantom and run commands like this and further response commands. So we've closed off access to this instance from anyone except for Phantom via the new security group.
Thanks, Matt. Now that you have seen Splunk Phantom's ability to turn AWS findings into action, we'd like to offer some additional resources for you to continue on your Splunk journey. Download our AWS Security Hub and Splunk ebook to learn more about how to turn the crush of security data into powerful insights using Splunk with AWS. Matt's .conf 19 session titled Tackle AWS Security Automatically with Splunk Phantom shows you even more of what you can do with these tools. We've also included our Phantom product tour that will allow you to see all Splunk Phantom capabilities. And our community Slack channel is a great way to get quick answers to your questions. Don't forget that we have an incredible community of Splunk users on our community website, where there is a Q&A section where you can search for the AWS Security Hub tag. There's also a discussion section around security tech talks, as well as Splunk ideas, where you can request enhancements to our solutions. If you want to learn more or continue the conversation, head on over there and I'm sure you will find what you're looking for. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedules to join us today. Please tune back in for future Tech Talks. We are excited to share this series with you.